In the heart of Jamaica's mountains, where the treacherous jungle meets the untamed sky, a war raged that would forever change the fate of the island. And the very people who called it home. The Jamaican Maroon Wars, two monumental conflicts that pitted runaway slaves, armed with nothing but sheer will and knowledge of the land, against the might of the British Empire, whose wealth and power stretched across the globe. But this is not just a tale of rebellion. It's a story of survival, of defiance, and of a battle fought in the shadows of history. Welcome, my fellow seekers of history, to Historical Finder. Today, we delve into one of the most significant but often overlooked wars in history, the Jamaican Maroon Wars. A war that saw enslaved Africans turn the tide against their colonial oppressors. But, who were the Maroons? How did they defeat an empire? And why did their struggle remain in the shadows for so long? In the 17th century, Jamaica was a jewel of the British Empire. Its sugar plantations fueled the empire's economy. But these fields of wealth were also fields of suffering, where millions of Africans were forced into labor under the brutal system of slavery. But there was resistance. Over time, groups of enslaved men and women began to escape the hellish conditions of the plantations, fleeing into the island's thick, mountainous jungles. They called themselves Maroons, and they would soon build one of the most formidable forces in the Caribbean, a force that would challenge the British to their very core. Led by fierce and resourceful leaders, the Maroons formed small, independent communities deep in the island's interior. But what truly set them apart wasn't just their ability to survive, it was their military genius. The British, with their superior numbers and advanced weaponry, underestimated the Maroons. But what they lacked in size, the Maroons made up for in knowledge of the land. The mountains, the swamps, the rivers, these were their allies, their silent partners. They struck swiftly, with guerrilla tactics honed over centuries of African warfare. In 1728, the First Maroon War erupted. The British forces, desperate to quell this growing insurgency, sent wave after wave of soldiers. But no matter how many men they sent, no matter how much blood was spilled, the Maroons seemed to vanish into the very earth itself. The British were at a crossroads. After years of costly fighting, they realized something they had never expected: a treaty would be their only way out. In 1739, after 10 years of brutal warfare, the British finally made an unprecedented decision. The Maroons had won the First Maroon War, and in doing so, they secured their freedom in a way no enslaved people before them had ever dared to imagine. The Treaty of 1739, signed in the heart of Jamaica, guaranteed the Maroons land, autonomy, and the right to self-governance. They were no longer slaves, but free men and women, living on their own terms. The British had made an agreement with a people they once considered beneath them, a people they thought they could never defeat. But the Maroons had made their mark, not only on the history of Jamaica, but on the history of the world. But peace was fleeting. As decades passed, tensions simmered. In 1795, a new war broke out, this time, between the Maroons and the British once more. But this time, the Maroons were not alone. The island was in turmoil, with a larger slave uprising on the horizon. The Second Maroon War was different. It was more desperate, more violent. But despite the odds, the Maroons held firm. Their knowledge of the land, their discipline, and their resolve once again made them a force to be reckoned with. For a brief moment, it seemed like history would repeat itself, but as the dust settled, the Maroons were once again victorious. The British were forced to sign another treaty, this time confirming the Maroons' right to live in peace. Today, the legacy of the Jamaican Maroon Wars lives on. In places like Accompong and Moore Town, descendants of the Maroons continue to live as free people, preserving their culture, their history, and their remarkable fight for independence. The Maroon Wars were not just about defeating an empire. They were about something much greater: the fight for freedom, the preservation of culture, and the unyielding spirit of a people who refused to be broken. And though their story has often been silenced, it is now time to tell it, loud and clear, for all to hear. Thank you for joining me on this journey through one of history's most inspiring, and yet underappreciated, chapters. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the Jamaican Maroon Wars, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a tale from the annals of history. Until next time, I'm your guide, and this has been Historical Finder.